the Democratic and progressive betrayal on immigration, silence, complicity, and political cowardice, the Laken Riley Act. A bipartisan stain on immigration writes the passage of the Laken Riley Act, signed into law by President Donald Trump on January 29, 2025, is nothing short of a disgraceful bipartisan attack on immigrant rights and American families. Instead of standing firm against the GOP's anti-immigrant crusade, 46 House Democrats and 12 Senate Democrats gave Trump exactly what he wanted, a political victory he can now brag about, comparing himself to Abraham Lincoln for supposedly bringing both sides together. This act mandates the automatic detention of undocumented immigrants charged with theft-related and certain violent crimes, regardless of conviction. It is a blanket criminalization of immigrants, setting the stage for mass detention, deportation, and a further erosion of due process. Yet the most shameful part isn't just that Republicans pushed this bill. It's that Democrats helped them do it while the so-called progressive left stood by in silence. The true cost of mass deportation versus amnesty for mixed-status families, mass deportation and detention cost $850 billion. Over 10 years, Trump's mass deportation plan, including the expansion of detention centers, ICE operations, and law enforcement resources, is projected to cost $850 billion over a decade, all paid for by taxpayers. This includes the cost of detaining millions of immigrants in expanded detention facilities, a massive government overreach that contradicts so-called conservative small government principles. American Families United Act economic gain, $1.5 trillion over 10 years. In contrast, a pathway to legalization for undocumented workers, as proposed in the American Families United Act, would add $1.5 trillion to the U.S. economy over the next decade through increased productivity, higher tax revenue, and economic growth. Legalizing immigrants would create millions of new jobs, increase wages, and strengthen Social Security by adding new contributors. Instead of draining public funds through mass deportation, immigrant legalization would inject money into our economy, helping all Americans. So why are Democrats and progressives silent? They allowed Trump to pass the Laken Riley Act, which criminalizes immigrants at the taxpayer's expense. But they ignored the American Families United Act, which would have strengthened families and boosted the economy. They chose fear and appeasement over real solutions. The legal fight ahead. Courts will challenge the Laken Riley Act. Trump and the GOP may celebrate their win now, but this law is far from settled. It will face legal challenges in federal courts, wasting millions of taxpayer dollars in legal battles. Key legal issues that will be challenged. 1. Violation of due process. Automatically detaining immigrants based on a charge rather than a conviction violates the Fifth Amendment. Courts have repeatedly ruled that people cannot be jailed without a fair hearing. 2. Unconstitutional federal overreach. Immigration enforcement falls under federal jurisdiction, but forcing local law enforcement to act as ICE agents has been ruled unconstitutional in the past. Expect states and local governments to sue the federal government over this. 3. Conflicts with sanctuary cities and state laws. Progressive states like California, New York, and Washington have already vowed to challenge the law in court. State and local leaders will resist implementation, setting up another battle between federal and state law. For impact on mixed-status American families. Legal challenges will argue that the law harms U.S. citizens who have undocumented spouses or family members, violating equal protection under the law. Bottom line, the law will not go into effect smoothly, and it may even be struck down or watered down in court. But in the meantime, Trump will use this legal fight for political gain while taxpayers foot the bill for endless lawsuits. Who betrayed immigrants and mixed-status families? Washington state Democrats who voted for or stayed silent on the Laken Riley Act. Rep. Rick Larsen voted for the bill, betraying the immigrant communities in his district. Rep. Ocasio-Cortez silent, despite claims of supporting immigrant rights. Rep. Mary Foss silent, refusing to challenge anti-immigrant rhetoric. Son Patty Murray voted for the bill, despite having the power to stop it in the Senate. Son Maria Cantwell voted for the bill, siding with Trump's anti-immigrant agenda. The progressives' deafening silence, Rep. Pramila Jayapal, only spoke out against the bill after it passed. Where was she 3 years ago when grassroots activists begged for action? Son Bernie Sanders voted for the bill. How does a self-proclaimed progressive socialist justify supporting an anti-immigrant crackdown? Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez only spoke up after the bill had already passed both chambers, offering no real opposition. Where were the socialists and Greens? Jason Call silent. No statements, no leadership, nothing. Kshama Sawant silent. A self-proclaimed fighter for workers, yet not a single word about the Laken Riley Act or the American Families Act. The Green Party silent. No national response, no fight for immigrants, just more of the same hollow rhetoric. Conclusion: the progressive movement has failed immigrants. The passage of the Laken Riley Act and the ongoing failure to advance the American Families Act prove that Democrats and progressives cannot be trusted to stand up for immigrants. Deportation and mass detention will cost taxpayers $850 billion. Amnesty and the American Families Act would boost the economy by $1.5 trillion. This law will be challenged in courts for years, wasting even more taxpayer money. Democrats and progressives chose the more expensive, crueler option. We need a political movement that actually fights for immigrants, not one that abandons us when it's politically convenient. Until that happens, the so-called defenders of immigrant rights in the Democratic Party and the progressive left should hang their heads in shame.